the amusement business is a major part of Americana, and it's competitive as hell. Every one of these parks has to hustle like mad to keep its trade up.
This year at Six Flags Great Adventure, answer the call to Batman the Ride. The only suspended outside looping nothing like it on Earth experience, not even at Disney. Batman the Ride, coming to Six Flags Great Adventure.
The big addition for the 1993 season would be a coaster unlike anything Great Adventure had ever seen. In fact, the looping inverted coaster would make its world debut just 1 year prior, at Great Adventure's sister park, Great America in Gurnee, Illinois. Batman the Ride would hang under the track and go upside down 5 times, built by a new manufacturer called Bolliger & Navillard. This was the latest addition made possible by Time Warner's acquisition of the chain, following the great success of the Batman stunt show in 1992. Time Warner really wanted to stress Six Flags as a national brand, rather than 7 individual parks, and the signage leading to Great Adventure was even changed from Great Adventure to Six Flags. Batman the Ride would be built on the former site of Lightning Loops, serving its final season in 1992, one track being sent to Oklahoma's Frontier City, the other sent to Maryland's Wild World. Shockwave would also be gone after just 3 seasons, part of the ride rotation program and sent to Astroworld to be reopened in 1993. Over the offseason, a storm destroyed the traffic jam bumper cars and it was removed. To make up for it, they took their mock spinning ride out of storage, the one that opened as Schwabenschen in 1975, removed in 1987, and reopened in 1993 as El Sombrero. Maintenance also turned their sights to their 4-year-old Aero Looper, Great American Scream Machine, having to replace the tops of the loops with track that had more bracing. The old loop tops were moved to the Safari and became a playground for the baboons. The park made a concerted effort to define and improve all the themed areas of the park, using a new tagline, bigger than Disneyland, but a whole lot closer to home. Opening weekend saw free admission to the Safari and half-price tickets, and after that, a normal adult ticket would be $28, kids under 54 inches $19, and $12 for people 55 and older. Parking was now $5. Batman the Ride would open on May 1st, and this wasn't just a thrilling coaster. To fit in with a new Disney-style effort, it was well-themed. The queue was a walkthrough of the slums of Gotham City, going into a tunnel that leads you right into the Batcave, featuring a life-size Batsuit, and your escape from Gotham City would be this special speed vehicle, the 4-across 32-passenger trains hanging under the track, rising up 105 feet and traversing 2,700 feet. It was the type of ride that brought the wow factor to Great Adventure. This was no surprise to Time Warner and Six Flags, seeing the success this ride had at Great America, and they would continue to flood their parks with the same ride for the rest of the decade. Time Warner was riding high, seeing their profits soar as they promote their brands in the parks, and by the end of summer, they announced their intention to buy the remaining shares of the Six Flags Entertainment Corporation, a deal worth $70 million. The 1993 season closed on November 7th, the latest in the park's history, using the same opening day promotion on that final weekend. Free safari and half price for the park. The park had rebounded to have its best year since 1983, before the Haunted Castle tragedy, before the deadly ride accidents and violent incidents drove so many people away, leading to management cleaning house. Attendance spiked 11% and cleared the 3 million mark, now deemed both Six Flags' biggest and most successful park. Some neighbors were unhappy with Great Adventure's biggest star, Batman the Ride, roaring into the night, described as a rhythmic sound not unlike a jet engine, and with the park open till midnight on the weekends, it made the problem worse. The neighbors could not complain about sound with the park's new addition for 1994, as it would be indoors, deemed a cinematic adventure. It would be Right Stuff Mach 1 Adventure, a 16,000 square foot, 100-seat theater, themed to the Time Warner-owned 1983 movie, The Right Stuff, that being about the US space program. Per Ray Williams, this simulator would make guests feel like they're pilots on their first supersonic flight training mission. Everyone will feel as though they're daring enough to try something that most humans will never do. It's the latest generation in simulator experiences. The park would also add a new bumper car ride called Autobahn, replacing Traffic Jam, which was destroyed before the prior season got started. When the kids arrived at Bugs Bunny Land, they would find the giant rainbow entrance gone, replaced by a giant tree stump. The first McDonald's would find its way into the park grounds, and the safari would welcome in 4 white Bengal tigers as part of Great Adventure's 20th anniversary. The park would kick off the season with Spring Breakout, featuring activities like volleyball, rock climbing, sumo wrestling, and human bowling, where people stuff themselves into a giant bowling ball and roll 100 feet down to knock down giant pins. The concert season started in May, a non-stop barrage of 35 weekend shows lasting all the way until the end of August, and that was when NBA legend Magic Johnson was set to appear at the park, part of a Six Flags tour to raise money for AIDS-related causes. According to Great Adventure, the summer of '94 was one of their 3 best, even if it couldn't surpass the phenomenal 1993 season. Looking forward, Ray Williams wanted to focus on families in the years to come. Our studies show that people want shared experiences with their families. It's not like the 80s. The whole mentality has changed, and people want to do things with their family and stay closer to home. There was a $100 million investment plan in the works, and Williams teased the idea of a whole new park site that had a separate gate, similar to what Disney World has done, as well as a museum, theaters, hotels, restaurants, and possibly even a movie studio. One thing was for sure, the park would invest $7 million to build a 10-mile sewer line, bringing sewer service to the park, and they reached a deal with a factory outlet mall a mile from the park, setting up a shuttle service between the 2 properties. They even started talks with the Jersey Shore attractions on a joint marketing campaign. Shortly after discussing the park's long-term future, Ray Williams would leave Great Adventure. He received a well-earned promotion as Six Flags Senior Vice President of Operational Planning and Strategy. He would be replaced by Scott Bernstein, the Senior Vice President and General Counsel of Time Warner Enterprises, in that role having helped put together the Time Warner merger. By the end of 1994, the park was teasing a big new ride for 1995, but they were keeping the details quiet. But in February 1995, they were ready to unveil Viper. Viper would be the second coaster to come to Great Adventure, built by the Japanese company Togo International, operating out of Cincinnati, Ohio, the first being Ultra Twister in 1985. Viper would stand on the same plot that vacated in 1989. This would be deemed as the world's first Heartline roller coaster, sometimes referred to as a spinning coaster. Those 2 Heartline spins giving riders the feeling of negative gravitational force, as though they were flying away. It would be the world's first coaster capable of a 360-degree Heartline roll. The park even asked for steel rings to be installed around the track, giving the ride more of a snake-like appearance, and looked a lot like Ultra Twister. There would be one other attraction for the 1995 season, that being Virtual Revolution, an upcharge motion simulator located in the Right Stuff Mach 1's gift shop, 1995 being its only season of operation. Now 21 years old, the park's original coaster, Runaway Mine Train, would be overhauled and receive a new motor, new cars, and a new operating system. Great Adventure would also bring back the Chinese Golden Dragon acrobats. There would be nightly fireworks shows starting in April, and they would update the Batman stunt show to pair with a brand new Batman movie coming out in 1995, Batman Forever. Time Warner had so much influence on Great Adventure and all the parks in the Six Flags chain, but right as the 1995 season started, they started working on a deal to sell half the company. They paid $50 million to get half the company in 1991, $70 million for the other half in 1993, and poured $250 million in investments ever since. They wanted somewhere between $600 and $800 million for half the company, taking the short-term gain and helping pay off their $15 billion in debt. It didn't take long to find a winning bidder. Less than a week later, Boston Ventures came in and bought 51% of the chain, paying $200 million in cash and assuming $800 million in debt. Still owning 49%, Time Warner would continue to promote their brands inside the parks. Viper would open to the public at the start of June, and right away, people were impressed with how different the ride was. Park World magazine's Paul Rubin called it relentless and even put it in his top 10. For me, they could build it 3 times higher, 3 times longer, and 3 times faster, and even then I wouldn't be satisfied. Viper was a main driver behind the best year ever at Great Adventure, attendance up a whopping 25% and clearing the 4 million mark, the first Six Flags park to ever achieve that feat. The safari also proved to be popular, drawing 2.4 million people, marking a 20% increase. It was also the first year the park expanded their marketing to cities like Boston, Washington, D.C., and Baltimore, emphasizing the need for an on-site hotel, and that would become the main focus of expansion heading into 1996. 1996 would see yet another coaster enter the mix, but this one would fit more in with their Disney-style approach. This was Skull Mountain, an indoor coaster built by Intamin, only 40 feet tall and maxing out at 33 miles an hour, twisting and turning inside a dark building, a building that from the outside looks like a human skull. It would be a coaster the whole family could enjoy, not just for the ride experience, but the story behind it. According to legend, an ancient civilization once lived here, protecting magic waters from avaricious explorers who never seem to return from the mysterious landmark. An adventure awaits, deep inside this mountain rising up from the jungles on Jackson Township. That wouldn't be all for the season. The Enchanted Teacups would make their debut, as would a new stunt show based on the Lethal Weapon movie franchise, advertised with explosions, stunts, and being a real Hollywood show. Before these new attractions even saw their first guest, Scott Bernstein resigned as park president, taking a job outside the company. Park officials immediately came out and said this would not hinder Great Adventure's expansion efforts. And 2 weeks later, the park had a new leader, Vincent Lupinacci, previously the president of Six Flags Over Mid-America in Missouri. True to their word, 9 days after Lupinacci's appointment, a 76-acre water park was proposed to the planners of Jackson Township. This would be the next big step in turning Great Adventure into a multi-day destination. It would be called Six Flags Hurricane Harbor, built adjacent to Great Adventure, starting with 11 attractions, including a wave pool, lazy river, pools catered to families, teenagers, and kids, and 6 water slides. By mid-June, the water park was approved, and the whole complex was in good graces with Jackson Township Mayor Peter Carlson. I don't think there's any kind of stigma there now. They overcame it by fine public relations and by really stressing safety. Now, it's a real family park. Skull Mountain opened to the public on June 3rd, drawing praise for its ominous outward appearance, good in-queue theming, and ride experience that's catered to all ages. As ACE member Ed McInerney said, it gives families something everyone can enjoy. A little kid could get into it. You can't see the ride, so you can't be afraid. During the Fright Fest activities, the Right Stuff Mach 1 Adventure was reprogrammed with a new show. This was Dino Island, and it was a huge success and would return to Fright Fest year after year. The park performed on par with their spectacular 1995 season, both years having added new coasters, and they had no plan to stop going into 1997. This time, they had their sights set on something big in Movietown.
The cold sweat chills down your spine, the shivers. It's not the flu. It's Batman and Robin the Chiller, only at Six Flags Great Adventure. A one-of-a-kind experience with 2 different bone-chilling tracks. Linear induction motors launch you 0 to 70 in under 4 seconds and shoot you 20 stories into the sky. Then you do the entire ride backwards. Six Flags! You in? Are you out?
Just in time for the new 1997 movie, Batman and Robin, Great Adventure was set to debut Batman and Robin the Chiller. To tie in with the duo starring in the movie, this would have 2 tracks intertwining with each other, rocketing them 200 feet in the air, dangling them for a moment, and then plunging back to the earth. And that's just the halfway point. This would be built by Premier Rides, featuring an LIM launch, the Batman side having a 139-foot inverted top hat, and the Robin side having a double inversion Cobra roll. Then, both going into a 0G roll, having another LIM boost to get the train up the 200-foot spike, and then doing it all backwards. It wasn't just Great Adventure adding Premier Rides launch coasters themed to the new movie. Six Flags Over Texas and Mid-America, newly renamed St. Louis, would be getting similar rides themed to the movie's villain, Mr. Freeze. It was a risky move, not just because it was the largest single ride investment in the park's history, but because of the new technology on the ride. Linear induction technology was introduced 1 year prior, that being on the Outer Limits Flight of Fear at Paramount's Kings Island and Kings Dominion. Motors on the track would generate a magnetic wave, and this was replicated 400 times, pulling the trains from 0 to 65 miles an hour in 5 seconds. This was set to open around Memorial Day, and to their credit, they were close. This opened in early June, and Paul Rubin described it as controlled mayhem. It's just wonderful. Anything that has those diabolical twists and plays with gravity like that is just superb. The Chiller would cause 2 rides to be relocated. That included the Space Shuttle, opening in 1985 as Looping Starship, and Centrifuge G-Force, opening in 1978 as Close Encounters. These would be moved to the boardwalk, near the Right Stuff Mach 1. Chiller would also take the place of Phileas Fogg's balloon ride, opening in 1975 as Panorama Wheel, but that would not be finding a new location. The Chiller was a big upgrade, of course, but soon the ride fell silent. 2 weeks after its grand debut, right before the Batman and Robin film was released in theaters, the park announced it would be shut down for a few weeks while they adjusted the motors. They wanted to get the ride back open for July, but July came and went, and there was no end to the closure in sight. At this point, the park spokesman said it was likely it would not reopen until 1998. Vincent Lupinacci noted how the closure was hurting attendance, not having that new coaster to draw in new crowds like they had the last 2 years. It would drop 8% from 1996, finishing at 3.7 million. The park did have one new attraction, Daredevil Dive, an upcharge attraction called a Sky Coaster, harnessing up to 3 people, lifting them up 175 feet, dropping down and swinging at 60 miles an hour. The price ranged between $15 and $25, all depending how many people were riding. While maintenance crews were rushing to get Chiller ready for the 1998 season, there would be another earth-shaking move at the top. Time Warner sold its remaining share of Six Flags to Premier Parks, a deal worth $965 million. And after you add in the debt they would take on, the price was really $1.9 billion. Based in Oklahoma City, Premier already had 13 parks, and they would be adding 12 more with this deal, becoming the #2 park operator in the country, just behind the Walt Disney Company. Time Warner wanted to pay off more of their enormous debt and get back to their main focus of entertainment, publishing, and their cable business. Premier would also acquire the rights to use the Looney Tunes characters as well as the Time Warner properties, having a 55-year renewable license to do so. Right away, Great Adventure said nothing would change in the short term, and this did not jeopardize their expansion. The 1998 season would start on April 9th, and Chiller would be ready. Per Vincent Lupinacci, it will be well worth the wait. If we opened last year, we would have inconvenienced guests. It would have been shut down on the hour every hour. We expect it to be the ultimate thrill ride. For those not looking for a thrill, the park would debut a laser light show, as well as a fireworks show tied to the animated movie Quest for Camelot, another Time Warner production despite the company being out of the business. The park would also start phasing beer back into the mix, hosting a Blues, Brews, and Barbecue music festival and deciding to try to serve beer in 2 different locations. This was the first thing Ray Williams cut out to fix the park's problems back in 1987, but more than 10 years later, park officials felt like it could be executed and controlled to make it as safe as possible. Before Great Adventure could even open up for the season, they had a glimpse of how aggressive Premier Parks was when it came to investment. They started teasing a one-of-a-kind thrill ride coming in 1999, lasting 3.5 minutes and twisting through 7 inversions, built by Bollinger and Mabillard, the same company that brought Batman the Ride to the park. Vincent Lupinacci said, "It's like you're in a flying chair." The ride hadn't even been approved by the township yet, but they felt like building the hype by making it public a whole year before it would open. But that would not be the end of it, not even close.
Medusa rears its ugly head. A monster coaster unlike the world has ever seen. You're strapped to a flying chair, 14 stories in the air. Just don't look down. You could turn to stone. Only at Six Flags Great Adventure.
Medusa was just the tip of the iceberg. Great Adventure was set to invest $40 million, more than double the amount of any other year in the park's 25-year history. They would be receiving a mind-boggling 25 new rides in 1999, removing only the 3 towers of the Adventure Rivers and Sky Pilot, the ride that opened as Joustabout in 1982. Among these new rides would be a family coaster called Blackbeard's Lost Treasure Train, a zero family coaster with a long 20-car train. Also, Roadrunner Railway, a Zamperla gravity coaster for kids. There would be nearly 20 new rides for kids in a new area called Looney Tunes Seaport, a new upcharged go-kart track called Great American Road Race, and other flat rides such as Twister, Time Warp, Spinnaker, Rodeo Stampede, Pirate's Flight, Pendulum, Jumpin' Jack Flash, Jolly Roger, Evolution, Chaos, and Houdini's Great Escape, an indoor rotating house of illusion based on a 1920s manor. Premier President Gary Story explained the massive expansion. Six Flags had been handcuffed by a lack of sustained capital growth. The way to grow park attendance is through good attractions. You need a mix of family and teen attractions and aggressive marketing and advertising campaigns. Great Adventure would be getting 20% of their total investment in 1999, 40 out of the $200 million. Premier saw Great Adventure as the flagship park in the chain. Premier's philosophy was, the longer people stay in the park, the more money they spend. The more attractions you have, the longer they stay, the more they spend. They recognize the influence that mothers have on their guests, responsible for 7 out of 10 people walking through the gates, so their marketing was aimed at women ages 18 to 49, trying to emphasize the value of a season pass. Premier CEO Kieran Burke said, "The scope of the overall expansion is nothing short of spectacular. Our guests have told us they want dramatically more rides and dramatically less lines, and that's what we're giving them." Great Adventure officials were equally excited, calling it their renaissance, their breakout season, an all-out war on lines, and a rite of passage from a great amusement park to a super park. Despite the chiller being open throughout 1998, attendance fell for a second straight year, down to 3.5 million, a 5% decrease. Premier was convinced they could do better. Now, with 50% more rides from the year prior, setting a new Guinness World Record at 76, New Jersey Governor Christine Todd Whitman paid Great Adventure a visit, stating, "It is critical that destinations like Six Flags continue to make themselves even more attractive. This is a wonderful boost for tourism." By the end of June, the park was reporting the best attendance ever, part of that being the massive ride collection, but also the steady ticket price, not rising from 1998, $39.20 for adults, and half that much for kids under 48 inches, 1960. Adding 50% more rides also meant a big demand for workers, and Great Adventure was so pressed for help they started offering free rides to the park, sending buses out to towns with lots of workers to pick up those who couldn't drive, especially the 15-year-old employees. Still, there were days when 10 to 15 rides had to close just because they didn't have enough staff. All the investment paid off. Attendance rose 11%, back up to 3.8 million, making Great Adventure the 10th most popular park in the country. It would only get more chaotic in 2000, as Hurricane Harbor was finally set to open that summer. It would be in the same complex as Great Adventure, but have its own gate. Park officials worried about the parks becoming overcrowded if they were included with one admission. That admission for the water park running at $26.99 for a day, 48 inches and under paying half price. The final product would be themed to a tropical island after getting hit by hurricane-force winds, span 45 acres and be priced at $40 million, the second straight year hitting that level of investment. They were already having trouble staffing their new super park in 1999. Adding a whole other water park called for extreme measures. This sparked the conversation about on-site employee housing, trying to build a $3.5 million facility for 400 employees. They already had been recruiting international workers, housing them in complexes around Jackson Township, but space was limited. They needed to take up the issue themselves. They needed 5,000 workers and were only able to find 4,400 the prior year. Governor Whitman gave a speech on Hurricane Harbor's opening day, joined by Bob Denver, Don Wells, and Russell Johnson, better known as Gilligan, Mary Ann, and the professor from Gilligan's Island. They cut the ribbon to signal the opening of the million-gallon wave pool. The biggest challenge Hurricane Harbor faced in 2000 was a rainy summer, but despite the bad weather, the water park met its goals. Six Flags put all their eggs in the Hurricane Harbor basket in 2000, so there would be no new rides added to Great Adventure. They drew in people with other events, including a new show called The Imperial Warriors of the Qin Dynasty, taping an episode of MTV's Real World, working with Univision to host Latin Fest, and inviting 30 couples to marry during Fright Fest, calling it the Hollow Wedding. However, they would hit the ground running in 2001.
Now, at Six Flags Great Adventure, feel the blast! Nitro explodes, blowing away every other coaster. Ignite your senses with Nitro! Our biggest coaster ever! Now at Six Flags Great Adventure, the mother of all coaster parks!
Throughout the winter, people were noticing a lot of activity in the back of the park, but could only speculate on what it could be. On February 1st, the park confirmed the 230-foot, mile-long Nitro. Built by Bollinger and Mabiard, the same company behind Batman the Ride and Medusa, this would be their hypercoaster model they introduced 2 years prior, focusing on height, speed, and airtime without going upside down. Paul Rubin described these hypercoasters like driving down the highway in your car at 80 miles an hour with your head out the window and driving off a cliff. Heading into 2001, the economy started to weaken, but park officials were still optimistic about drawing in local crowds. The price for a one-day ticket was $45.99. That included the Wild Safari. Before the season started, they also lost their founder. Warner Leroy died on February 22, 2001 at the age of 65. He hadn't been involved in the park since selling his stake to Time Warner in 1993, but none of this amazing complex would exist without him. Leading up to opening day, the park hosted a Survivor-type contest, inviting 100 people to camp out between April 4th and 6th, all of them being able to ride Nitro at 6 a.m. on the 6th, but the winners would get the front row on the first train. They would take part in competitions like a quiz on the ride stats, a relay race, and a balloon toss. However, the hardest challenge was sleeping in tents while the spring temperatures dropped below freezing. Opening day was April 7th, and despite the cold temperatures, people flocked to Nitro. It got rave reviews. Nitro drew long lines, but starting in 2001, there was a way to avoid it. Fastlane. Free of charge, guests could visit the Fastlane office in the front of the park and reserve a time to return on Nitro, Batman the Ride, Medusa, Batman and Robin the Chiller, Great American Scream Machine, and Skull Mountain. This was modeled after Disney's Fast Pass, introduced in 1999. Great Adventure also went to Jackson Township to approve a helicopter ride. Guests could pay an extra fee and be taken on a helicopter tour, similar to what other parks have been doing around the country. This was part of a push to add upcharge attractions to the park. In 2001 alone, they added Alcatraz the Ride, Slingshot, Speed Sports, Turbo Bungee, and Turbo Force, taking their number of upcharge attractions from 2 to 7. One ride that would not be part of the season was Spinnaker, the Octopus Ride, added as part of the massive onslaught of rides in 1999. Viper would also be out of commission for the entire year, the park making an effort to smooth out the track as complaints started to mount. There was also one ride getting a big upgrade. The Robin side of the chiller would replace his over-the-shoulder restraints with a lap bar, and the following year, the Batman side would follow suit. Attendance exceeded the park's expectations, but one night in April brought back bad memories of the past, as 4 people were arrested in what was described as a melee, as well as an armed robbery of multiple park guests. This reignited the discussion about security, as local police and the park tried to work out a plan. However, everything would change after the September 11th terror attacks on New York City and Washington, D.C. Security became paramount, and parks invested more money in security, insurance, and marketing, trying to lure back people weary of public spaces. Great Adventure guards would start searching every bag at the front gate. They also wrestled with the right time to reopen the park, especially with the attacks happening so close to home. They did open the weekend after the attacks, not expecting big crowds, but thought it was important to heed the president's message of keeping life as normal as possible. Fright Fest would begin shortly after, and it would have an entirely different look. Less focus on villains, more focus on heroes, less horror and gore, and more positive and happy vibes. The park would also start offering free admission for firefighters, police, and first responders. By the end of the year, the attacks seemed to hurt the business of large parks that required more travel, but regional parks like Great Adventure did not see a drop-off in business. In 2002, no new rides would be added, but 5 rides would be removed. The upcharge Slingshot was leased the prior year, and that lease expired. Centrifuge G-Force had been at the park since 1978, opening as Close Encounters. 2 other rides from 1999 would be gone, Pirate's Flight and Time Warp. 2002 would focus on families and renovation, painting, paving, refurbishing areas of the park. They would introduce the Dolphin Discovery Show, featuring bottlenose dolphins and California sea lions. They would add a daily parade, water skiing show, acrobatic circus, and a fireworks display focused on celebrating America. The park would also put on themed festivals: Mardi Gras, Caribbean, Gospel, Sports, Irish, Scottish, Greek, Mediterranean, Asian, Italian, and Latin American. The biggest addition for the year was the Winter Lights drive-thru, putting up 1 million lights around the park, firing them up every night from mid-November all the way to New Year's Day, extending the season longer than it ever had before. This would range between $13 and $16 per car and $150 per bus, with discounts available for season pass holders. 2002 also brought in the first rumblings of trouble at the top. Premier Parks had been very aggressive across the chain over the last 3 years. Great Adventure alone seeing $80 million in new investment between 1999 and 2000, and over that time, Premier flooded their parks with over 40 roller coasters. Late in the summer of 2002, Six Flags stock plunged over a poor earnings report, citing an 11% dip in attendance, and pointed out 3 parks in particular: Over Texas and Dallas, Worlds of Adventure in Cleveland, and Great Adventure. It was true. 2002 saw attendance fall by 8%, partially because of a struggling world economy, and the family activities and festivals not drawing in the same crowds as a new coaster. They would try to rectify that in 2003.
Only a new coaster that tilts into a flying position before takeoff, then sends you soaring like a bird, like a plane. Only a one-of-a-kind experience this powerful, this spectacular, is worthy of the name Superman Ultimate Flight.
Superman Ultimate Flight would be unlike anything Great Adventure had ever seen. They went back to Bolliger & Mabillon for their newest model, their flying coaster that was introduced in 2002. Riders would sit 4 across under the track, and then the seats would flip into the flying position, and riders would feel like Superman, flying across the landscape, that being a part of the parking lot they carved out next to the Great American Scream Machine. This would start with a 100-foot drop and have 2 inversions, its signature element being a 78-foot pretzel loop. It would be the first coaster to use a Time Warner character since they sold their interest in Six Flags in 1998. Superman opened on April 17th to rave reviews, but 5 hours into its opening day, it tripped a sensor and was shut down for the rest of the day. They had to call in state inspectors to get their approval, and it was back open the next day. That was a minor setback, but the chiller would have a much more significant issue later in the summer. The ride had a defective photo eye, causing the launch to be slower and caused the ride to valley, leaving some of the 20 riders stranded upside down. The ride would close for a few days while they tried to replace the part. The one other new ride was Eruption, a new slingshot ride to replace the one they lost, but they would say goodbye to other upcharge attractions, Speed Sports and Turbo Force, those lasting only 2 seasons, as well as Evolution, another ride added from 1999. Despite their new coaster, attendance dropped 3% down to 3.15 million. As the economy sputtered and tourism was down for the entire state, Six Flags was feeling it nationwide, as they had another bad earnings report in the summer of 2003, and they started making dramatic moves. They sold off their entire European division at the start of 2004, raising $345 million by unloading 7 parks. That year, Great Adventure would be celebrating its 30th anniversary but didn't offer any new rides. Instead, 2 rides from 1999 would be taken out, Jumpin' Jack Flash and the Pendulum. The park would focus on entertainment in 2004, introducing a new stunt show, Batman vs. Catwoman, Catfight, and retheming the Right Stuff Mach 1 to a 3D show featuring SpongeBob SquarePants. Six Flags' new pitchman, Mr. Six, would show himself at Great Adventure and park his bus near the Parachute Training Center. Six Flags continued to tumble, its stock dropping 25% in one day following another drop in attendance in the first half. For many parks, this was a time to scale back, save money, and reevaluate what to do next. Great Adventure did not take that path. In fact, they had their sights set high. Very high. Actually, higher than anyone had ever gone before. Thanks for watching episode 3 of this 5-part documentary. If you could drop a like and share this video with anyone who may be interested, I would really appreciate it. This is a massive project and I appreciate the support. I also want to again thank Tom from Great Adventure History and the late Harry Applegate for being so nice and supportive with the project. If you love Great Adventure and its history, check out their amazing website, that link's down below. Stay tuned next week for episode 4, as Six Flags brought Great Adventure to new heights before it all came crashing down.